They say you never truly know someone until you divorce them. I used to think that was just bitter talk from wounded hearts. Then I sat across from my husband of 23 years in a mahogany conference room and watched him smile, actually smile, as his attorney slid papers across the table that would leave me homeless. "Sign here, Margaret," his lawyer said. "Mr. Patterson is being quite generous with the timeline. 30 days should be sufficient for you to relocate. The house I designed? His. The cars? His. The savings account we built together? Somehow a business asset now. Everything gone with one signature." But here's what Robert didn't know as he sat there in his $1,000 suit, his mother smirking in the window reflection, and my former best friend texting him encouragement from the hallway. I hadn't come to that meeting unprepared. See, being underestimated is a dangerous thing for the wrong people. Before I tell you how a 62-year-old housewife took down a multi-million-dollar real estate empire, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city and state in the comments below. 6 months before that conference room, I'd been folding Robert's laundry when his phone buzzed on the dresser. The screen lit up with a text from someone named V. "Can't wait to see you tonight. We're the cologne I like." My hands froze mid-fold, his shirt clutched against my chest like a shield that had come 20 years too late. I'd noticed the signs, of course. The late nights, the new cologne, the way he'd started showering immediately when he got home, washing off evidence I wasn't supposed to find. But I'd spent 23 years being told by his mother Patricia that I was lucky that a small-town girl with big-city dreams should be grateful her son had chosen me. "Robert works so hard, Margaret," Patricia reminded me every Sunday at the country club, her voice sharp as cut crystal. "The least you could do is not burden him with your insecurities." So I'd stayed quiet, made his favorite meals, pressed his shirts, played the perfect wife at business dinners where I smiled and charmed his clients while he took all the credit. That night, when Robert came home late, again, I said nothing about the text. Instead, I asked about his day. "Exhausting," he sighed, loosening his tie. "The Riverside project is killing me." He talked for 20 minutes about zoning permits, while I nodded, asked questions, played my role perfectly. But something inside me had shifted. A door I didn't even know existed had cracked open, and cold air was rushing in. The next morning, after he left, I did something I'd never done before. I went into his home office, the one I cleaned monthly because he couldn't focus in clutter, and I looked, really looked. That's when I found the folder tucked behind his golf trophies where he knew I'd be dusting. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, already filed, dated 3 months earlier. 3 months. He'd been planning this for 3 months, holding my hand at our grandson's birthday party, kissing me goodnight, letting me make his coffee every single morning, all while he'd already set the wheels in motion to erase me. But the property settlement is what made my blood turn to ice. Every asset, the house, both cars, our savings, even the vacation condo I'd found and negotiated the price on, listed as his sole property. And at the bottom, in small print, a monthly allowance of $1,200. $1,200. After 23 years, I stood there shaking, the papers trembling in my hands. And that's when I heard it, the garage door opening. Robert was home. He'd forgotten something. I had exactly 30 seconds to decide who I was going to be. I photographed every page with trembling hands, put the folder back exactly where I'd found it, and went downstairs. "Hey, forgot my phone," Robert said, grabbing it from the counter. He kissed my cheek, actually kissed my cheek, and walked back out, like I was nothing, like those papers upstairs weren't a loaded gun pointed at my life. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up. For 3 hours, I sat on the bathroom floor, crying so hard I thought I might break apart. 23 years, 2 children, countless sacrifices. And this was how it ended, with papers hidden behind golf trophies and a $1,200 allowance. But then something shifted. I looked up at myself in the mirror, red-eyed, mascara-streaked, pathetic, and I thought about my mother, about how she'd worked 2 jobs after my father left, about how she'd looked at me on my wedding day and whispered, "Don't ever let a man make you forget who you are." I'd forgotten. God help me, I'd forgotten completely, but I was about to remember. The next morning, I called in sick to my volunteer position at the hospital, the one Patricia had arranged for me, at the hospital where she sat on the board, naturally. Then I drove an hour to my mother's grave. "Mama," I whispered, sitting in the damp grass, "I need your strength now. I thought I might find you here." I turned to find Linda, my best friend since college, my maid of honor, the woman I'd cried to through miscarriages and celebrated with through every milestone, the woman who was supposed to be my sister in everything but blood. The look on her face told me everything before she even spoke. "You knew?" I said flatly. "Margaret." "How long?" She sat down beside me, and I could see tears in her eyes. But I felt nothing, just cold. 8 months, she whispered. "Her name is Vanessa. She's 34. Works in his office. Margaret, I wanted to tell you, but Robert begged me not to." "Robert begged you." I stood up slowly. "Not your best friend of 40 years. Robert. He said you'd been depressed, that the marriage was dead anyway, that you'd both been going through the motions for years. And you believed him? You believed him instead of asking me." Patricia confirmed everything, and he was so convincing. "Patricia." I actually laughed. "Of course. Tell me, Linda, what did they promise you?" Her face flushed deep red. "The foundation board position," I said softly. "The Patterson Family Foundation that I've run for 15 years. That's your price for betraying me." "Margaret, that's not." "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out and tell Robert and his mother that their spy failed. Tell them I know everything. Tell them whatever you want. But we're done." I drove home in a fog of rage, so pure it felt like clarity. My phone rang. "Robert, Linda says you found the papers." No apology, no shame, just irritation. "Look, this doesn't have to be ugly. The settlement is fair. Sign it, and we can both move on with dignity." "Dignity," I repeated. "You're sleeping with someone younger than our daughter, and you want to talk about dignity? Don't be dramatic. We've been roommates for years, Margaret. You know that." "Roommates. 23 years reduced to roommates. The settlement stands," he continued. "The business is in my name. The assets are complicated. And frankly, you haven't worked in over 20 years. "I worked every single day," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Every dinner party that landed you clients. Every charity connection. Every book I balanced when we were starting out. Every sacrifice I made so you could build your empire. That was work, Robert. That's not the same as." I hung up, and then I called the one person I knew could help me fight back. Eleanor Hartfield had a reputation that made other divorce attorneys nervous. 70 years old, sharp as broken glass, and she'd been practicing family law since before I was married. "Margaret Patterson," she said when I called, "I was wondering when you'd reach out. Half this city knew about Robert and Vanessa before you did." "Everyone knew," I said, the humiliation fresh and burning. "The question is, what do you want to do about it? Do you want fair or do you want to fight? What's the difference? Fair gets you alimony and a small settlement. Fighting gets you war. It gets depositions, discovery, every dirty secret dragged into the light. It gets expensive, ugly, and it takes years off your life." She paused. "So what do you want?" I thought about Robert's smile, Patricia's smirk, Linda's betrayal. 23 years of making myself smaller, so Robert could be bigger. I want to fight. Good, Eleanor said. Then let's talk about what Robert doesn't know you know. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, focused, methodical, ruthless. Eleanor taught me to document everything. Every business dinner I'd hosted, every connection I'd made, every contribution I'd given to Patterson Commercial Real Estate. You weren't just a housewife, Eleanor explained. You were an unpaid business partner, and we can prove it. I went through 23 years of files, photos, emails, evidence I'd unknowingly been collecting my entire marriage. Emails where Robert asked me to research properties, handle client communications, even negotiate deals in the early days. My name on the original business license as co-founder, removed years ago in a restructuring I'd barely paid attention to. And then I found something that changed everything. Buried in a box of old tax returns, I discovered discrepancies. Large ones. Properties listed as business assets that Robert owned personally. Income that didn't match the books I'd kept in those early years. Deductions that looked creative. Eleanor, I said at midnight, I think Robert's been committing tax fraud. Silence. Then, are you absolutely certain? I kept the original books. These returns don't match reality. Don't touch those documents. Don't move them. Don't breathe on them. I'm sending someone tomorrow. She paused. Margaret, if this is what I think it is, you might not just walk away clean. You might walk away while he drowns in the wreckage he built. The next 2 months were the strangest of my life. Robert moved out, into Vanessa's apartment, though he told people he was staying at a hotel. Patricia called weekly, her voice dripping with false concern. Margaret, dear, Robert's been very fair. At your age, you don't really need much, do you? At my age, as if I was already dead. I'm praying on it, Patricia, I said sweetly. The prayer angle worked perfectly. Patricia couldn't push me if I was seeking God's guidance. Meanwhile, Eleanor's team built our case. Forensic accountants worked through the tax returns. A private investigator documented Robert and Vanessa's relationship timeline. And I kept living my life, showed up to my volunteer positions, had lunch with acquaintances who distanced themselves, watching their shock that I wasn't falling apart. Even attended a charity gala where Robert was being honored, sitting 3 tables away, letting him see I wasn't destroyed. You're playing chess while he's playing checkers, Eleanor told me. He thinks you're in denial. He has no idea you're 3 moves ahead. Then came the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. George Shelby, Robert's business partner, a man whose dying wife I'd visited every week for 2 years, reached out to meet for coffee. Mrs. Patterson, he said, his hands shaking slightly, I need to tell you something that's been weighing on my conscience. What George told me made everything else looked like child's play. Robert hadn't just been cooking the books. He'd been systematically hiding assets for years. Offshore accounts, shell companies. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was a calculated plan to leave me with nothing while protecting his wealth. Why are you telling me this? I asked. George's eyes filled with tears. Because when my Sarah was dying, you were the only person who visited, who brought meals, who just sat with her. Not for show. Because you're good. And what Robert's planning, it's evil. You deserve to know the truth. He slid a flash drive across the table. Everything's on here. I've made copies, and I've talked to my own attorney. If this goes to court, I'll testify. That's when I knew I wasn't just going to survive this divorce. I was going to win. Which brings us back to that conference room, to Robert's smile, to his attorney's manicured nails, to the signature line that was supposed to erase me. But now you know what they didn't. I'd spent 3 months preparing for this exact moment. No, I said simply. Robert's attorney blinked. I'm sorry. I won't be signing this. I opened my own folder, much thicker than theirs. I have a counterproposal. I think you'll find it quite comprehensive. I watched Robert's face as he read, watched the color drain, watched his hands start to shake. This is insane, he said, his voice cracking. You can't. Can't I? Let's see. I'm asking for half of all marital assets, standard, plus compensation for 23 years of unpaid labor as business consultant, documented thoroughly, plus damages for emotional distress. I leaned forward. And then there's the interesting section about tax fraud, about offshore accounts, about shell companies created to hide assets. His attorney was frantically flipping pages. Mr. Patterson, is this? It's lies, Robert said. Desperate lies from a vindictive. I have testimony from George Shelby. I interrupted calmly. I have 10 years of tax returns that don't match your actual books. Books I kept. I have emails, documents, and a forensic accountant's report that would make the IRS very, very interested. The room went silent, except for Robert's shallow breathing. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to agree to my settlement. All of it. Or I'm filing these documents with the court, sending copies to the IRS, and you'll spend the next decade fighting federal charges. Robert stood so fast his chair fell backward. You don't have the guts. Try me. My voice was steady. 23 years, Robert. 23 years of everyone underestimating me, your mother treating me like I wasn't good enough, all of you assuming I was just the pretty wife who planned parties. I was learning. Every business dinner, every conversation, every deal. I was paying attention while you thought I was just smiling and serving wine. His attorney pulled him out of the room. Through the glass wall, I could see Robert pacing, face red, hands gesturing wildly. His attorney kept shaking his head, pointing at my documents. Patricia, sitting in the corner, finally spoke. Margaret, surely we can be reasonable. No, Patricia, I said, meeting her cold eyes. We can't. Not anymore. You spent 23 years making me feel small, making me feel like I should be grateful your son married beneath himself. Well, guess what? I was never beneath him. I was holding him up. And when he let go, I didn't fall. When Robert came back, he looked 10 years older. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. But I want you to know. I don't care what you want me to know. I said, sign the papers. The settlement took 4 more weeks to finalize. For weeks of Robert's attorneys trying to find loopholes, trying to negotiate down, trying to intimidate me. But Eleanor held firm. And so did I. The final agreement gave me half of everything, the real everything, including the hidden assets, the house, a substantial monthly distribution, and Robert's promise not to contest any of it in exchange for me keeping the tax fraud evidence sealed. He got off easy. Eleanor said, as we celebrated, he could have gone to prison. I know, I said, but I'm 62 years old. I don't want revenge. I want my life back. Honey, she smiled, you got something better. You got free. If you believe underestimated women are the most dangerous kind, this channel is for you. Stay, there are more stories coming. The satisfaction came 2 months later, when the consequences Robert tried to avoid caught up with him anyway. 3 other business partners, men who'd been watching, waiting, filed a lawsuit alleging fraud and mismanagement. They demanded a full audit. And because of the divorce, because of the settlement that revealed just enough to raise questions, Robert couldn't hide anymore. The investigation took 6 months. I watched from a distance through news articles and gossip, watched as Patterson commercial real estate crumbled under scrutiny. He wasn't charged criminally. There's a difference between aggressive accounting and actual fraud, and Robert had stayed barely on the legal side. but the civil penalties were enormous. His partners forced him out. He had to sell properties at a loss. The business he built for 30 years essentially dissolved. And Vanessa? She left him 3 months into the investigation. Apparently, 34-year-old project coordinators aren't interested in 60-year-old men facing financial ruin. Patricia stopped calling altogether. But here's what surprised me. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. The first year after divorce was disorienting. I had money, real money. I had time. I had a house that was truly mine. And I had no idea who Margaret was without all those roles I'd played. So I decided to find out. I went back to school. Online classes in accounting. It felt powerful to formalize skills I'd been using for decades. Then I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping women navigate divorce and financial planning, helping them understand they're stronger than anyone thinks. You give them hope, the director told me. They see you and they see survival. I made new friends, real friends, women who'd been through their own wars. And slowly, I started to forgive myself. That's the part nobody tells you. Somehow, you end up carrying guilt for not seeing it sooner, for staying too long, for being stupid enough to trust. But I wasn't stupid. I was human. I'd loved someone and believed in promises. That wasn't weakness. That was hope. Robert broke that faith. That was his failure, not mine. About 18 months after the divorce, I was planting roses in my garden. The one I'd always wanted but never had time for, when my phone rang. Linda, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Margaret, she said, voice thick with tears. I know I have no right, but I need to say I was wrong. So wrong. And I'm sorry. I sat there in my garden, dirt under my fingernails, feeling nothing. No anger. Just distant sadness for what we'd once had. Why now, Linda? Because Tom left me for his dental hygienist, 28 years old. And suddenly everyone I thought was my friend, they're his friends. They're distant. I'm alone. And I realized this is what I helped Robert do to you. Yes, I said simply, it is. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about it. Really thought. I don't know. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm busy building a life that doesn't have room for people who sell me out. I understand. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Me too, I said. I'm sorry you're learning this the hard way. But Linda, you'll survive. Women like us are tougher than anyone gives us credit for. That evening, my daughter Emily came over with my grandson Tyler. At 8 years old, he was all energy and questions. Grandma, why doesn't Grandpa come here anymore? Emily tensed, but I smiled. Grandpa and I decided to live in different houses. Sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make that choice. But you're not sad. Not anymore. Sometimes things change, and that makes room for new things. Like your garden? Exactly like my garden. After they left, I sat on my porch with wine, watching sunset over the roses I'd planted, the vegetables I'd started growing, the whole space I'd created that was entirely mine. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Margaret, it's George Shelby. I'm starting a new commercial real estate firm. Nothing huge, just something ethical. I could use a business manager with your skills. Interested? I stared at that text for a long time. A job. A real job. A chance to be more than a volunteer, more than a divorcee rebuilding. A chance to be a professional at 63 years old. Why not? I texted back. Let's talk. George and I met for coffee. I want to build something different, he explained. Transparent. Honest. No offshore accounts. No creative bookkeeping. And after watching what you did, how you documented everything, how you stood up, I realized I want that integrity in my business. I'm 63, George. Most people my age are thinking retirement. He smiled. Most people our age spent 30 years in careers. You spent them being excellent at something everyone took for granted. Now it's time everyone recognized it officially. I started part-time. Within 3 months, full-time. Within 6 months, George made me partner. Shelby and Patterson Real Estate. The sign read, seeing my name there, representing my work, my expertise, felt like reclaiming something I didn't know I'd lost. 2 years after that conference room showdown, I ran into Robert at a charity event. It was unavoidable. We still moved in overlapping circles. He looked older, tired. He'd taken a job managing a small property portfolio, decent, but nothing like the empire he'd ruled. "Margaret," he said, something unfamiliar in his voice. "You look good. Happy." "I am. I heard about your business. With George. That's good." Awkward silence. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "For all of it. I was cruel. Arrogant. I thought I'd built everything myself. And I forgot you were there for every step. I forgot marriage is supposed to be partnership, not competition." I looked at this man I'd spent 23 years with. This man who'd tried to erase me. And I felt pity. "I forgive you, Robert," I said, meaning it. "Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and walked away. "You okay, Mom?" Emily appeared at my side. "Yeah," I said, surprised it was true. "I really am." That night, I went home to my house, my garden, my space, made tea, sat on my porch, thought about the journey that brought me here. I thought about the woman in that conference room being told to sign away her life, the woman betrayed by her husband, best friend, mother-in-law, the woman everyone underestimated. And I thought about who I'd become, the woman with her name on a business sign, the woman who helps other women find strength, the woman who learned that being underestimated is only dangerous if you stay quiet. I didn't win through revenge. I won through refusing to accept someone else's version of my worth, through choosing myself piece by piece, day by day. Every document I found became evidence. Every humiliation became fuel. Every moment I stayed silent while gathering proof became strategy. Robert thought he was taking my life in that divorce. Instead, he took the cage I'd been living in and didn't even know it. And me, I walked away with something better than revenge. I walked away with myself. The woman I'd always been, buried under 23 years of being someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law, someone's unpaid assistant. Now, I'm just Margaret, business owner, mentor, grandmother, woman who learned her worth the hard way and will never forget it again. They say living well is the best revenge, but it's not about revenge at all. It's about survival, about looking at the worst thing that's happened to you and deciding it won't be the last thing. Robert took everything, or tried to, but you can't take someone's worth, someone's skills, someone's strength. Those things stay with you even when everything else is stripped away. He thought he was taking my life. He was just giving me permission to finally live it. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you weren't enough, this story is for you. If you've had to rebuild from ashes or had to learn your worth the hard way, drop a comment and let me know. Your story matters. And if you believe that underestimated women are the most dangerous kind, the kind who document everything, who stay quiet while gathering evidence, who turn pain into power, then you belong here. This isn't the last story I'll tell. There are more coming. Stories about women who were erased, overlooked, and quietly fought back. Stories about the moment you stop apologizing and start reclaiming. Hit that subscribe button if these stories speak to you, because we're building something here, a community of women who refuse to stay small. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, the most dangerous thing you can do to someone is underestimate them, because they might just be keeping score.